Hi, I'm Vince. Welcome to another Vince Unlimited technology video, telling you all about the cameras I had. Around the late 70s, 1970s, not 1870s, I wanted a better camera and yearned for something more than the toy-like Instamatic, which I previously made a video about. You can find that by following the link in the description below, taking you to this video shown here. My budget wouldn't stretch to a proper single lens reflex camera, but I wanted something as close as possible to that type of device. I remember discussing all this with my father and a compromise was found. I'm not sure where he'd come across the cosmic symbol, a UK adapted Russian Smena symbol that was first launched in 1973 and produced by Lomo in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. He suggested the simplicity of the operation of this type of device would suit someone like me, graduating as I was from a basic point and shoot camera. I can't recall anything of the purchasing process, the price that it cost, or where I got it, or exactly when, or what I first used it for, but I think it got it around at the beginning of the 80s as a birthday present. The camera was a boxy shaped device that looked semi-serious with its black plastic corrugated panels mounted front and rear. It had a matching black plastic fixed Lomo T43 40mm f4 coated triplet lens featuring focus adjustment as well as another ring to set the exposure. To add further complication around the lens itself was another fiddly fingernail operated adjustment for the film speed. Taking a picture involved pressing a slightly imprecise plastic horizontal lever to the right of the lens, which moved with initial gentle movement but then hard clicked on as it fired. On the top left of the camera was a lifting film loading wheel spline which incorporated a swing out metal crank handle, and in the centre a standard fitment hot shoe accessory mount for flash units. On the back of the camera was a centrally mounted image counter, a large cocking lever to quickly move the film stock on one frame in a single action, plus a small manually settable dial mounted in the centre to remind you what film you had installed. The worst feature was the same problem I had experienced on the Instamatic, a lack of SLR functionality. Again, relying on an offset viewfinder, meaning the picture was never quite the one being viewed, a problem particularly exaggerated with closer shots. The second worst feature was the reason it was named. The symbol moniker was included because this camera not only featured focus gradations on the lens in meters and feet, but also had little pictograms to help indicate which settings to use. Icons of heads, full bodies, buildings and mountains were included, making the camera look like it was designed for a child rather than an adult. Similar simple representations were also on the settings ring, showing various weather conditions. I suppose they help the user quickly get a good photo setting without being able to see the actual numbers via a focus screen, but actually made the device look rather amateurish, unlike the gorgeous two-piece protective brown leather case it came in. Loading a film in those days involved a process of click opening the back of the camera, lifting the crank handle away, dropping in a 135mm film roll cartridge, commonly called 35mm film, lowering the crank through the film cartridge centre, feeding the fiddly film strip out of the roll and onto some splines on the right hand side, cranking the handle a few times to secure it on the shaft, closing the rear door, then winding the film a couple more times, all ready for the first shot. On completion of all shots, the crank handle would again be deployed to wind the film strip all the way back into the roll, all ready to be removed in the opposite sequence from above. Forget to first wind the film back into its housing and the whole roll would be compromised by light entering when the back was opened. No one usually made this mistake twice, although some would have done this once. Film rolls commonly came with a capacity of 36 frames, but with judicious use could usually get about 38 or even 39 pictures, which was satisfyingly pleasing, as the price paid was based on a per roll basis, not per image. Also in those days, the cost of a film included posting and processing, which ensured you paid up front. Not only that, but with the returned photos, you received a money-off voucher and a free post envelope to encourage you to keep returning to the same supplier. You could also select film roll cartridges with choices between 12, 20 or 24 frames, which were respectively much cheaper. One also had to choose the film speed required, measured in ISO. If you were going to capture shots on a lovely, brightly lit sunny day, you would select an ISO 100 film. But if you want to take pictures in dull lighting conditions or indoors, an ISO 400 would fare better. ISO 400 would also work best for fast-moving subjects as well, such as moving animals or racing cars, all particularly useful with a Grand Prix circuit passed through your bedroom where you had a water feeding hole at dusk. The problem with all this was you couldn't chop and change mid-roll, meaning if you had an ISO 100 film in the camera, all the darker scenes you chose would end up looking dark and blurry. And if the film was ISO 400, any bright scenes taken would be grainy rather than sharp. So to counter the problem, many generally used a midpoint ISO 200 general film, meaning sunny shots were not as fully crisp as they could have been, and any darker scenes had a modicum of grain. But at least you didn't have to use a crystal ball to foresee what you might be photographing in 6 months' time. Because in many cases, this did happen, unless you were quite wealthy, whereby film rolls could be rattled off like machine gun fire. Most people use their cameras judiciously, usually saving shots for holidays and special occasions. The other decision to make was whether to use film roll and processing that returned actual physical photographs printed onto film paper, or to go for the much cheaper plastic mounted slides. Either way, you'd also get your originally exposed negative film roll returned as well. Note that having slides in those days wasn't such an issue, as many homes had handheld or slide viewers or even projectors. Personally, I tended to opt for an ISO 200 film stock in a 24 roll format, with about 2/3 of the time choosing to use the cheaper slides to maximise return. All decisions I made were based on my budgetary limitations, which also restricted the number of times my camera shutter was deployed. I owned the camera for about a decade and actually remember it fairly fondly. It was a rugged, durable and mechanically reliable device, particularly when mostly kept in the fitted protective case, which patinated wonderfully. The brand and name was suitably obscure, so neither impressed nor offended anyone. But in hindsight, I should have at least painted out the childish pictorial icons to make it look a little bit more mature. At the time, I knew little of the optical reputation of this Russian oddity to argue its validity. Plus, I'd always yearned for a true SLR camera for both selecting composition and providing creative adjustability. These may have had a steeper learning curve, but I was probably smart enough to have mastered it. Meanwhile, a camera is only as good as the images it can produce, so I've selected some here to show you. Now, please bear in mind that in viewing these, they are video images of a digitally captured scans from slide or photographic prints originally taken about 40 years ago, so probably less bright than they would have been observed when first taken. Firstly, let's look at a quick comparison between daylight shots of my motorbikes, the Honda CB200 taken with my previous Kodak Instamatic, and the Honda CX500 taken with my Cosmic Symbol. You can clearly see the difference in virtually all aspects, including brightness, sharpness and colour. If you want to see more about these bikes and my adventures on them, you can find them here on my YouTube channel. Also note the aspect ratio of these shots, the square format. This is because they were scans from the original slide-mounted photos. In this next shot, in a more traditional 6x4 print film format, my motorbike along with its friend is parked overlooking an Isle of Wight seafront. The bright shot is set against a brighter sunny sky and the central section is overexposed, showing the inability of the camera to balance the foreground darker area and the background. Thankfully, the processing process correctly exposed the foreground, where the detail is, not the sky, where it isn't. A similar problem exists in the shot of my friend's Vauxhall Viva car on a road leading towards a distant bridge. But the main issue here is the fact that the car is half out of shot. No doubt caused by the offset viewfinder and my inability to fully compensate for this. Partly because different focal lengths had to be considered regarding composition. In this shot taken at Brands Hatch motor racing circuit, the limitations of capturing fast moving things. It was obviously a shot taken without panning the camera, as both the background and the foreground is sharp, but the motorbikes are blurred, but not in an artistic way. A different ISO film roll may have helped here, but as I explained, I was unable to forecast what I was to film, and even if I had chosen an alternate film, the rest of my photography may have been compromised. Such as this static pose shot of my friend Spike, the owner of the aforementioned Viva. Here the vast landscape would have been much less detailed with a higher ISO film roll. However, the colours were not particularly crisp and can be seen to decay visibly with each mile or so into the distance. Plus, once more, the sky is overexposed. Later on I took another photo of Spike, this time on a sunny June in France. You can see the colours of his t-shirt are bright and clear, but the sand has little detail, even though the sky is nicely coloured. Also, note that in this case the offset subject was deliberately chosen for aesthetic reasons to simulate the view Spike was aiming for with his camera. The other shot from France is one of a group of us, and I am in the shot on the red bike, so it was taken on my camera by another friend. I cannot recall who took it, but do remember telling them about the offset viewfinder. As a result, they have managed to centralise the group, but the vertical framing isn't good. However, there is a reasonable amount of detail captured in this outside shot. Unlike the details lost in this awful photograph of my girlfriend Karen and I on her bike, the issue here is massive camera shake. Again, it was taken on my camera, but probably by my sister's boyfriend Bob, as his bike is in the background. The camera shake was almost certainly caused by the unexpectedly light shutter release button, which had a sudden resistance coupled with an over-enthusiastic operator. The next photo of Karen on her bike was taken by me inside a garage at night. The subject is well lit, but as you can see from the spotlight on the mirrors, it was taken with a flashlight. The light control is actually quite good, with a fairly even distribution of light and the capturing of bright colours. There isn't even a commonly seen red eye effect, despite Karen looking right at the lens. Yet another bike photo, this time of a Vincent motorcycle, once more in daylight. However, this is a poor quality photograph. The bike and onlookers are dull and indistinct, the sky completely washed out and the foreground lacking colour. I cannot recall the possible reasons for these limitations other than to suggest that a lot of photographic attempts on the cosmic symbol were mixed. In preparing for this video, I did note that the instructions warned of using the automatic symbolic weather features outside of the recommended timeframes, being 8 AM till 6 PM April to August and 2 PM to 4 PM during September to March, and they need to adjust accordingly. However, looking at the picture, I was probably within these constraints. Compare this to the shot I took of the Motor Martin CBX taken, I think, on the same day, and there is some colour, admittedly of the dark brown bike set against a brighter background, whilst propped up on a blue stand on green grass with much more detail everywhere, despite the similar washed out background. Eventually, bikes gave way to cars, but I still had the cosmic symbol, and so naturally took a shot of my brand new, very second-hand Hillman Avenger. Again, taken in broad daylight and centred in the shot, this photo is only spoiled by a discoloration on the left side. This was highly likely a result of me opening the back of the camera to load a film without realising there was one already in there. I told you. The photographic discoloration was the effect of such unlimited exposure action on a film roll, probably 2 or 3 away from the one currently set, ready to be exposed. Again, the story of my Hillman can be found on my Vince Unlimited YouTube channel, linked below. What you won't find on my YouTube channel is a video about pot noodles. Although, in fairness, I did actually write a piece about them on my website, now still available on my WordPress site, linked below, etc., etc. Proving I am a multitasking guru, which I must have been to get this indoor shot on my camera. I am here with 3 of my friends, Jeff, Teresa and Jackie, in what would now be called a selfie. The camera was set up on a table in front of us, and I deployed the timer function. I recall taking a bit of time to frame the shot and was the last to sit down, grabbing the tasty pot of noodles as I sat. It ended up quite good, with 75% of us looking fully engaged at the camera, although it was shot indoors with natural items, so suffered from not having everyone in focus, although it's surprisingly free of graininess, much like the deliciously smooth noodles. Another food and drink based indoors photo, and this shows me hitting a J2O juice whilst lounging on my tiger skin bed throw. Notwithstanding the clearly iconic imagery, note the photo is relatively sharp, detailing the pattern throw, my detailed check shirt, the telephone and bold stickers on the bedside table in the background. However, the luminance of colours is rather left wanting, and all the shadow detail except the studs are missing from my jeans. The same issues apply to this outside shot of my dad sat cleaning a Suzuki 650. Although the external lighting should be able to reproduce brighter colours, the nature of the overcast day seems to have suppressed this ability. Perhaps this was due to the weather selection setting, but on dull days like this I usually set the camera to overcast. So it was probably more down to the subject being behind a large wall with the main light source from the high left. Compare this shot to the one I took of my then fiancée Linda at the zoo. This is much sharper, more colourful and detailed. The focal length is deeper and there's little grain. It's almost if it was taken with another camera, but the fact that it shows Linda with her own camera proves this was taken with my cosmic symbol. Like most, I hangered for a more commonplace model from the trusted likes of Canon or Nikon, such as Linda had. Unfortunately, the next cameras I had the fortune to use were from such esteemed suppliers. But you'll have to subscribe to hear all about this in the next video I make on my cameras. Thank you for watching, particularly until this bit, the very end. So top off your commitment with a little comment below about your early camera experiences, or perhaps a bit of criticism or otherwise of my photography attempts. And then add a like to the video to encourage me to put out a few more tech videos. For now, goodbye.